we've been living here on Lake Fontana for about 4 years now on our floating cabin. A bit of a different lifestyle, but one I wouldn't trade for the world. You know, when people are like, oh, is it love at first sight? Yes, with the dog. He was like cute, but that dog was like, oh. Nothing motivates you like, you're going to be homeless, so you better jump on it. People might call that psycho. I would call it confident. It's great when something that you love can actually start making you money. It just feels like too good to be true.
This has to be something that you would be willing to do for free, because you will do it for free for an undetermined amount of time, but you can't fail. You can only quit. Because as long as you're committed to learning and growing and evolving, your content's going to get better, and it's always going to resonate with the people who are interested in the same kinds of things that you're interested in. Welcome. The Creative Freedom Plan is a podcast for female entrepreneurs. On this show, I'm sharing conversations with other badass women who have mastered sales, content, money, and the energetics of success. Plus, all my best strategies and tools to help you show up authentically online and sign your first 5 dream clients. Let's get into the episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Creative Freedom Plan podcast, or welcome if you're new here. I am your host, Michal Emily Schuster, and I am joined today by the beautiful Sarah Jones, who I am getting to know along with you. We've been following each other online on Instagram for a couple years now, and I've just always loved Sarah's vibe, her content. She has this amazing, warm, authentic, just like you feel like you know her from her videos kind of feel. So I knew I wanted to invite her on the podcast, and she said yes. So I'm so excited to dive into her story through our conversation today. But Sarah, if you would just give us a little introduction, tell us about yourself, where you are in the world, and what you're up to these days.
Oh, that was such a sweet introduction. I'm so happy to be here, and you are an awesome content creator that I've derived so much inspiration from too. So this is totally mutual, and I'm psyched. Could not be more psyched to be here. So I am on my floating cabin in Western North Carolina. We're kind of right nestled between the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and the Nantahala National Forest. And we've been living here on Lake Fontana for about 4 years now on our floating cabin. So a bit of a different lifestyle, but one I wouldn't trade for the world, and that has grown me so much personally, and that I now love to share with the world on a few different platforms. We're on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok as Keeping Afloat with the Joneses.
Amazing. And I want to get into all of that and how you transition from land life to floating life. And so you just got married.
Mm-hmm.
You and Brandon just tied the knot.
I am Mrs. Jones.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty exciting.
Yeah, I would love to start with your backstory, you and Brandon and your relationship, and whose idea was it to move onto a floating house, and how did all of that come about?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much there. I guess I'll just start with how we met. So Brandon was working at the marina here on the lake that we now live on. He manages that marina, and at the time I was working with the National Park Service, and since the Great Smoky Mountains National Park borders this lake, we use boats a lot to access certain areas of the backcountry. So long story short, we kind of met indirectly through work because I was there taking the boats out and whatnot. And I'm glad that you have me here to tell this story, because his story is a lie. He'll tell you that I totally hit on him, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Trust me, I would own that. There's nothing wrong with that. But what really happened was he had the cutest dog that I'd ever seen in my entire life, which is now my dog. But at the time, it was his dog. And so Aiko is this really fluffy black and white Akita. So she's super cute, big, fluffy dog. And I was just obsessed with her. So, when people are like, oh, is it love at first sight? Yes, with the dog. He was like cute, but that dog was like, oh. So I start talking to him about the dog, and eventually he asks me if I want to go out on a boat with one of his friends and says I can bring some of my friends. And I'm like, group setting sounds safe. I'm up for it, you know. And it was also pretty cool timing because all of my friends would tell you for the previous like 6 months before we met, I had been telling all of them like I want to meet a boy with a boat. I love the water. I feel like I don't have any access to it. The only time I ever get to be on the water is when I'm working, you know, like where do you find these boys with boats? And so it's like I manifested it or something. And so we go on our first date. I guess you would call it a date, even though it was like a group, on his friend's boat, who he introduced to me as the mayor of Fontana, which at the time I was like, wow, he's so well connected, which is hilarious now because I now know Fontana Dam has 13 residents. So the mayor is like my next door neighbor. But anyways, yeah, we went out on the mayor's boat, and we go wake surfing, which I'd never done before. And I get up on my very first try. So I'm just like feeling super confident, like I'm crushing it. They said nobody gets up on their first try, so don't worry about it if you don't. And I did. So I'm just feeling good. And then I fall and everything's okay. I go underwater, I come back up, and the last thing I see is like the nose of this wake surfboard just hurling towards my face. Yeah, I don't even know what happened. And even now, because I've wake surfed a lot since, I have no idea how that happened because just naturally when you fall, you're leaning, so you push the board away from you. Don't know what happened, but somehow the board came and just smacked me in the face. And thank the Lord, I kind of like go into shock, and so it doesn't really hurt. And I don't really know what has like just happened other than the fact that like there's been some kind of impact, and the boat comes back around to me and their faces go from like, hey, right on, that was a great run, to horror. And I'm just like, oh my God, what happened? And I get in the boat and I look, and like clearly my nose is broken. I've got a slit, like a split in my lip all the way up to my nose. My lip is like in two flaps. Like, oh, sorry, I'm probably going to gross people out with that. But it was like, yeah, it was crazy. And I'm just like, no way that happened on our first date. I'm mortified. I'm like concerned about the future of my face and if I'll smile like I ever used to again. Like there's just a lot going on in my head. And so Brandon takes me to the hospital, which mind you is like a 45, 50-minute drive away. And thankfully I'm still not like in a lot of pain or anything, but the whole way there he just has this super like calm and lighthearted presence. Like he had this way about making what honestly could have been an extremely traumatic event into something that felt like somehow an adventure, which is just crazy. And like right off the bat I was like, how is it possible that this guy is turning this like kind of objectively negative occurrence into something that is sort of like fun and lighthearted, and like I just felt like for sure it's all going to be okay. And I'd like just met him, so that was really cool. And that wasn't front of mind for me. That was all kind of, you know, after the fact I reflected on that. But so I get to the hospital and I'm in there for like 6 hours, and COVID had just started. This was 2020. And so he couldn't be in the hospital, like waiting for me. And he sat out there on the curb right outside the hospital in the middle of summer. I'm texting him like, you can go, you can leave. You know, my family lives in this area. I'm from here. It's no big deal. So my mom can come get me. And he won't leave, and he won't even get in his car and sit in the AC because he doesn't want me to come outside and for even like 2 seconds like wonder where he is or feel alone or something. Like he's just right there waiting for me for like 6 hours. I thought that was really sweet. So a few weeks later, after I got my stitches out, we went on a second date and had dinner. So that's kind of how we met, which is hilarious, and it sort of set the tone for this. I mean, not like blunt force trauma, but you know, for this this life of making lemonade out of lemons and just seeing everything as one big adventure and doing it together and not leaving each other's side and just being like teammates. So it's pretty
Oh,
much history since then. We pretty much were inseparable like after our second date.
that's amazing. Oh my gosh. And you're going through all of that. And yeah, to have that reflection on the other side of like, who is this guy that is not going to leave my side, that's like turning this awful experience into an adventure and making me feel so much better? Yeah, that is just, oh man, someone
Right.
who
And I
can
feel
make you
like it's
feel
really,
safe like that. Yeah.
yeah, and it's really hard to skillfully turn a bad situation into a lighthearted one without being dismissive. And he just like had a really natural way. Like it didn't even seem like he was trying. It was just his personality to be like that. And so, yeah, that was green flag. And yeah, we just got married this past August after about 3.5 years of dating, and we are now, let's see, a little over 2 months into our marriage.
Oh, that's amazing. So,
Yeah.
in the intro to your videos, you talk about like rising costs and the affordability of moving
Mm-hmm.
onto the lake and like pursuing that kind of lifestyle. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
also wondering if it was like the adventure aspect as well that called to you.
Oh yeah.
Walk me through all of that.
Oh yeah, totally. It's all of it. I mean, it would definitely be an oversimplification to say that there was like one reason that we moved onto the water, but it was a lot of things. It was the fact that the whole time that we were dating, we were spending like every single evening after work when I got off with the park service at 5:30, I would drive over to the marina and we would take his boat out and go on the lake and just like try and chase what little bit of sunset we would have as the season, went on. And so we were spending as much time as we could just out in nature and on the water together and going on adventures and learning new sports and just yeah, really connecting with each other and the lake at the same time. And so when we had an opportunity to acquire one of these floating cabins, which the way that it works, they're all grandfathered in, so you can't just like decide that you want to do it. One has to be for sale that is already there, if that makes sense. So there was one in the harbor
Why
that we
is
worked
that?
in.
Real
I guess
quick,
it's
what's the
because
reasoning? Hmm.
Yeah, I guess it's because they don't want like, too many of them overwhelming the lake where they're like everywhere and they're a hazard of navigation or there's no areas where you can go and not see them because some people would argue that they're like an eyesore. And the majority of the lake is free from any floating cabins. There's just a few select areas that have them, and I guess they want to keep it that way, which I totally understand. So,
And also,
um,
it's free, like almost exclusively free from development as well, isn't it?
Totally, because like I said, the one side is the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and the other side is a national forest, which of course you can't build houses in either one. So the whole surrounding area of this lake is like just pure mountains, forested mountains. It's so scenic and beautiful, but that
Hmm.
kind of leaves the lake as the only place that there can be development. So they let there be a certain amount just out of almost like necessity. But they don't want it to like get too blown up. They want to still preserve the natural scenic vibe, which I really appreciate. I'm just happy that I was lucky enough to, find one for sale because that can be a waiting game of like years sometimes because there's only a limited number. So there was one that came up for sale in the harbor, um, just through word of mouth. It wasn't even listed yet. So we were super lucky just because we spent so much time on the lake to kind of hear about it. And it was like the biggest piece of junk in the entire harbor. It was like the smallest one, the most rundown. It had nothing going for it, like no electricity, no running water, no heat, no shower, like nothing. I mean, it was just like a shack, if that. But it was a permit, it was like the potential of turning it into something, and the privilege to have a place on the water like that. So we got it for super cheap, like $22,000 for a house, which is just crazy.
Hmm.
Granted, like I said, it was a piece of junk, so it wasn't livable at all. And that was kind of our first big adventure. Was at the time Brandon had a house on land and I was renting a house, and so he had a mortgage. I had, an exorbitantly, is that a word? Exorbitantly expensive rent payment like everybody does nowadays. And so we really liked the prospect of cutting out both of those bills and investing a small, relatively speaking, a small amount of savings into this house, and kind of seeing it as a way that we could go on this grand adventure of like living off the grid. There's no phone service, there's no Wi-Fi or anything like that, and it was going to have to be solar and filter lake water. So it was just this really intriguing adventure, coupled with the fact that we knew that we would be able to cut out like at least together $2,000 worth of bills every month. So that's what we did, much to my mom's chagrin. My family, I think they were worried about me. They were like, yeah, she's going through something right now. We just got a letter. But I appreciate that they just kind of let it happen and were like, if you need anything, if it's storming, you can come back home. Like, you're not stuck out there. That was really sweet. But I've honestly never felt unsafe out here, but that's another story. So anyways, we go and we spend like a few months renovating this cabin, and we had to do it really quickly because Brandon's, or my lease was about to end and I didn't want to renew it. And Brandon had put his house on the market, and we figured that would take like a couple months because that's not usually like a overnight process. And it seriously was like an overnight process. I mean, I think in total, the whole thing took like 3 weeks. So we were like, oh my God, we both are literally about to be homeless, I guess by choice, but still, we didn't choose for it to be this fast. And so we just worked day and night as much as we could around our work schedules. And we didn't have electricity out there. So that was
Oh
really
my gosh.
challenging for a lot of everything has to be boated in. So the whole thing was very stressful in a lot of ways. And it kind of bonded us together a lot more quickly than I think other people at that point in their relationship might naturally be. Um, and I think that was like a test where it could have gone one of two ways. Like, we would have either figured out like if we're in it for the long haul, or like that would have been the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. And it was great. Not to say there weren't a few little spats, but like we just found that we worked really well together, and that we had the same goals, and we're both hustlers, and we just wanted to get after it so that we could start living this lifestyle that we were dreaming about.
And nothing
And then we
motivates
moved
like a
in.
deadline.
No doubt. Yeah, nothing motivates you like you're going to be homeless, so you better jump on it.
Did either one of you must have had some kind of like building experience or be like kind of inclined towards, home renovation and stuff? Or did you guys just learn all that on the fly?
Oh, that's a really good question. I had zero experience whatsoever. Like, I literally did not even know the difference between a Phillips head and a start bit. Like, nothing. I knew nothing. Um, and Brandon was a welder for 15 years before he worked at the marina. So he had some experience working with metal, but carpentry was completely new to him, which is like the majority of what you're doing when you're
Mhm.
renovating. It's like in a regular house, it's mostly working with wood. And so that was definitely a learning curve. I remember there's an interior wall in that house that we framed out that wasn't there. And to anybody who knows anything about framing, like, they're going to laugh at this, but we framed it in place, like physically standing the wall in place, which is like just a nightmare on a floating dock that's moving. You're supposed to frame walls laying down so that you can make sure that they're square, and then you stand them up. And like, we didn't know any better, and we framed it standing up in place, and it was all out of whack. And so, like, not to say just because we renovated it, that was not to say that we renovated it perfectly. Like, it was for sure a learning curve. And as time went on, as we lived there were things that we had to fix that we didn't do right, and things that we learned the hard way. um, but it was a lot of YouTube University and a lot of asking friends that might know, if they could show us how to do it. And, we didn't have any builders, but we had a couple friends that came and donated a day if we would, spot them beer and pizza, that kind of thing. So it,
Amazing.
it was a process, but yeah, you learn quick when you're learning hands on.
Yeah. At what point did you start filming? Were you filming in the midst of all this? Because that
Mm-mm.
was one thing that I got to benefit from was making YouTube videos and messing up and filming it, and then people coming in the comments and like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? You're doing it all wrong." And that was
Right.
kind of helpful. But yeah, when did you guys start filming and making the videos?
Yeah. No, that wasn't even on my radar at all. That was never my like intention, it not with the house and not in life in general to ever like create content. I had like my own
What?
personal Facebook page or whatever, but like I never had any dreams of anything like that. And so we lived in that house for like a year and a half before I ever created the YouTube channel, which was our first platform. And that whole time we didn't even have internet or phone service. So like we were truly just like out there off grid and like not just minding our own business, doing our own thing. Like, and the thing that was tough about that kind of precipitated the YouTube channel was that our families felt like they were really in the dark, like, and we're both family people. Like, it's not like we're, have bad relationships with our parents and don't care. Like, we really wanted to be in contact with them. It's just that we really did not have an ability to until we like went into town or if I was at work on my lunch break or something like that. So we were kind of limited in our ability to let them in on this life that we thought was like the coolest thing ever. And everybody that hadn't seen it and just like heard what we were doing in my family, they kind of just thought that sounded insane. I think that's understandable. Like, but I feel like once you see it, and especially once you experience it, you start to understand that it's like, it's really not that crazy. And it's
Yeah.
really a comfortable lifestyle. And it's a logical and sensical lifestyle for a lot of reasons. And so I just wanted to share that with like our family and friends. And so we had so many people that kept telling us, you need to make a YouTube channel. You need to make a YouTube channel. And then you can like upload videos, when you go somewhere once a week that has Wi-Fi, and then we can see like what's happening there. And I was always just like, I don't know anything about that. Like, I don't even watch YouTube, like I don't even follow stuff like that, much less know anything about how to create. And so I just was kind of averse to it for a while because I was like, I'm not going to be good at it. And I don't like doing anything that I'm not going to be the best at. But that's like, I mean, I felt the same way about the renovating. And then it's like I said, you just learn by doing it. Um, and so eventually I was just like, you know, I'll give it a shot. Worst comes to worst, it just kind of fizzles out and it doesn't go anywhere. And like, whoops, that was fun, whatever. So I started a YouTube channel, and I thought, well, I think now in hindsight that it's hilarious that I named it Keeping Afloat with the Joneses because we weren't even engaged. So that was a leap. But if that doesn't tell you how much I was like confident in our connection, our relationship, because I was
That's
not
so
a
funny. I
Jones.
didn't even put that together. Like you guys just got married, but the channels.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Some people might call that psycho. I would call it confident.
Manifested.
Yeah, but we threw around a couple other names. I was like the floating cabin couple. Oh, I can't live with that. That's so cringe. Like I can't. And also, we were developing this dream, like just kind of idly, that had always been Brandon's dream, but we were starting to talk for the first time about it maybe being our dream, of maybe like going on this epic sailing journey one day. And I wanted to have a name. Like, I was like, if we're going to do this, I want it to be something that can transition with us through different types of, you know, lifestyles and whatnot. And so
Smart.
Keeping Afloat with the Joneses was born. And Now when I go back and watch that first video, like I can't even get through it. Like we're our own worst critics, right? But when I go and I watch that, I'm just like, oh my God, that is so embarrassing. And I would have done a million things different. And what was I even thinking with that? And so on and so forth. And so, anyways, I can tell that I've grown a lot, in terms of my content creation abilities and just like my creative mind and the way that I see things and look for things and like my eye with the camera and editing skills. So that's been a really fun journey, but I never really anticipated it being something substantial like it's grown to now because like I said, it was really just a way to kind of let our families in on what we were doing in a visual way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Beyond just posting pictures on Facebook or whatever. I wanted it to be a little bit more personal so that they wouldn't think we were so crazy. And then I'll never forget like the first comment that we got from somebody who I didn't know, like who just found us, randomly on the internet. Like I was
Yeah.
kind of creeped out. I was like, what are they doing here? Like this isn't for them. Why are they like they don't even know us. Why are they watching this? This is so weird. Um, but yeah, it's unique and it's different, and a lot of people are drawn to that, and a lot of people are fed up with just insanely high rent and this, that, and the other, and a lot of people are kind of craving that like reconnection to nature in a more tangible way, like not just going outside, but like almost living outside, like the off-grid thing, the van life, that all of that is starting to gain momentum, I feel like, because we're just living in this overly connected world. And that's kind of the irony of creating content in the space that I'm in, is that people are almost like trying to get off the internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to have that like dichotomy of like, how can you reach people like that if not through the spaces that they're already in? So
Exactly.
it's kind of just great. Yeah, it's grown really organically and naturally, just as we found people who understand where we're coming from and think that like they would totally do something like that at this point in their
Mm-hmm.
lives. And even if it only ever is a dream, they admire it and find it, cool and educational and entertaining. And I think that's great.
Yeah. Tell me about for you what shifted from this just being something that you were doing to, keep your friends and family in the loop and like give them a window into your lifestyle to, because I know nobody sticks with it if you don't have a love for it, if you don't have a passion for it. So what kind of like got awoken in you through this process?
Oh, that's such a good question. It was definitely the creative process of filming and editing, which, like, we've been on a few, like tiny house tours, YouTube channels type thing. And when I tell them that I love editing, their minds are just blown because apparently everybody hates editing. And I'm just like, what? That's my favorite part. I love editing. Like, the only thing that annoys me about it is that there's so many other things in my life that sometimes have to take precedence and I don't have enough time for it. Like I wish I could create more content because I truly love that process because I
Yeah.
never had, I kind of realized once I started to fall in love with content creation that I never really had a creative outlet because I can't play any instruments and I'm not artistic. And I just never, really had something like that. And then when I look back now in hindsight, it's kind of funny because growing up, I was always the kid that, like, for my parents' birthdays, I would make them like little PowerPoint slideshows on floppy disks. And if any of your listeners are old enough for that, and like for class projects, if we had an option for the medium that we were going to present it in, for sure I'm doing a video. Like I don't want to stand up there and talk in front of people. Like I want to do a video where I can, prepare in advance and make things creative, like a Prezi or something like that. So in hindsight, I'm like, I think I always loved like videography and digital media. I just didn't have anything that kind of pointed me in that direction or any realization that I could actually do something with that.
Mm,
Like not just as a job, but creatively rather. Like I never realized that that could be a creative outlet. And yeah, so I fell in love with that process. And then once we started making a little bit of money with it, I was like, no way. This could actually be a source of income too. Like it just gets better and better. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just, what it's great when something that you love can actually start making you money. It just feels like too good to be true. But the more that you do it and the more that you let yourself fall in love with it and you get better and better at it and you get more practice, the more money it'll start to make you naturally. Because you're just putting those positive vibes out there and like, your content is genuine. It's coming from a place of love. And I think that that comes across. And so yeah, it's been a
Yes.
really cool journey for me to figure out that I love creating digital art, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Videos. I really enjoy that process, and um, the fact that it is actually a source of income now is like a bonus.
Yeah, that's
It,
amazing.
But to your point, I will say, if that had been my goal originally, I don't know that I would have stuck with it. Like, I think if I had right off the bat just been like, I'm just doing this because I want to make money rather than because I have something that I genuinely want to share with the world and because I'm like overflowing with my full cup rather than it's empty, I need to fill it with this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think that I would have stuck with it because it's a lot of work and very little return initially. It's not like you're getting paid for your time, and it takes a while to start making money. So you really do have to have some kind of like intrinsic motivation for what you're doing and what you're sharing. And um, I've figured that out in hindsight, but I was lucky to have that to begin with. So
Right.
it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out beautifully. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's totally something. One of my first coaching offers was like a YouTube sort of build a YouTube channel, how to monetize it kind of thing.
Hmm.
Cause like you, when I like started making money from it and it just like clicked for me, I was like, oh my God, if this was something that I knew, like if I knew that this was a path coming out of school and making my way in the world, like that would have been a game changer. So that was inspiration
Hmm.
for me to create a course around all of that. And that was like absolutely how I framed the course was like, you got to love it. This has to be something that you would be willing to do for free because you will do it for free for an undetermined amount of time.
Yeah.
But like, there's the guarantee that you can't fail. You can only quit because as long as you're committed to learning and growing and evolving, like you're going to get better and your content's going to get better. And it's always going to resonate with the people who are interested in the same kinds of things that you're interested in. And what's beautiful about it, especially like the online business and creative realm, that I think, we're all just kind of playing with, we're scratching the surface of, other people are really successful and paving the way, but there's no ceiling, like there's no cap to what you can do with it. It's complete creative freedom. And it's not like, you know, there's no boss that you have to go to and be like, oh, I'd like a cost of living compensation raise this year. you know, it's
That
just
is so
amazing in
true.
that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so true. It's awesome that you have some of the resources that you're putting out there that those exist now because I majored in biology and Spanish, so couldn't be more unrelated to what to what I'm doing. At least, well, maybe not at my day job. I do use my biology, but at least with the content creation, it's like I didn't have a single course in college that I took that relates to this, and I
Right.
regret that. But of course, I couldn't have had the foresight at the time to know that I would be doing something like this. But now that college is behind me, I'm definitely not going back. It's cool that there are online resources from folks like you who have kind of been there and done that and been through the process of slowly starting to create content and then wanting to monetize it and just kind of how big you can take it, like you were saying.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And like kind of what you're saying with the house renovation with YouTube University, like it's just so beautiful to live in a time where all of these resources are available no matter what direction that you want to go in. Whatever you want to learn, if you have that ambition, if you have that drive, it's out there and you can learn it. I think a lot of what people get hung up on is like not giving themselves permission or not thinking that it's anything that they would be good at, or kind of like what you were saying, where you're not going to be good at something the first time that you try it, and it's
No.
not going to be enjoyable until you get some level of mastery in it. So you kind of have
Hmm.
to just like grit it out until you start kind of getting a feel for it. You have a process, you have some more momentum with it, and then it starts to flow a lot more naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely some just like some moments where you just have to like keep going and you may not feel, I mean, just like any job,
Yeah.
or any hobby, really anything. You just, there are moments that you love it and there are moments when you just got to keep going. And it helps a lot in those moments where you got to keep going if intrinsically you do love it. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah, I'm
exactly.
just thankful to have something here that I am really passionate about, like, and that I feel like I can share really genuinely. Like I'm not trying to sell anything, I'm just
Mhm.
truly, which, not that there's anything wrong with like a small business that's trying to promote their stuff on social media, but I just mean it's great that we live in a time where just me sharing my day-to-day life can actually earn me income. Like
Yeah.
what I am already doing, just sharing it with people is actually educational and inspiring for them, and it's valuable, and in turn, it incurs value. So that's so crazy, but it's really cool.
It's so cool. Yeah, I'd love to hear, because I'm sure you get, kind of transitioning from the first comment from someone who you'd never met and kind of feeling like, what the heck are you doing looking at my life? To now, I have to imagine that there's like thousands of people coming into your comments, into your world,
Hmm.
being inspired, being impacted by your work. Is there any that stand out in particular, or maybe you could just talk about how that's kind of impacted you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, that has been like the most unexpected part of all of it, is just sort of the like community that we've built, especially on our YouTube channel through creating this content. It's like I know all of their names, like all of the people that, regularly tune in and they comment
Hmm.
every week and they tell us like what's going on in their lives. And, they send us stuff for Christmas, and like they let us know if they got sick. It's just, it's so cute and it's so special that we've never met most of these people and we probably never will. But they feel like a sense of connection with us, and they feel like a sense of belonging on our channel, that they're safe enough to share things about their life, and like they'll chime in on one another's and be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And it's just really awesome that we've facilitated something like that, where at the very beginning it was just strange to me that anybody would care at all. And here we have all these people that care so much, they're so invested, and that's really motivating for me to, you know, meet my deadlines. Every single Friday we have a video. I don't want to disappoint them. I really care about their experience when they're watching, and how what I'm putting out there into the world could impact them. And I really don't take that for granted. And so I try and create content that's very uplifting and inspiring. And like, even if they're never going to go live on a floating cabin, which certainly isn't the point. I'm not saying everybody should. It's cool that I could still use our lives to encourage them to like take other steps that they might be afraid of taking, or to try and reconnect to nature in some way that's doable for them, that kind of thing. So it's cool to know that we can have an impact, and that I can choose what that impact is going to be, and contribute, to their lives, even though I've never met them.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm curious, like, what that's looking like for you now on a day to day, weekly basis. You kind of mentioned some new opportunities that were coming up with the channel and, the creative work that you've been doing. So, what does that look like now? And I think it would be fun if you could walk us through, like, maybe the structure of like how you kind of live and plan your weeks and come up with the content that you're publishing weekly.
I would not recommend anyone do what I do in that in that arena. I'll, I'll tell you what I do. just so you know, don't do what I do.
Perfect. Let's hear it.
um,
Here's what not to do.
yeah, I mean, miraculously every week it works out for me, but I think that there's definitely a better way, and I would probably recommend whatever that better way is. But you know, one of the only regrets that I have about our YouTube channel is that whenever I started it, because I never had any plans for it, I made one video and then I posted it. And I didn't create like a number of videos in advance. I never got ahead, like I never
Mhm.
bulk created content. And since our content isn't like talking head or something that you can, kind of create in batches, it really is just vlogs about our life. We have to be living our life in order to create content. And so our weekly YouTube videos have always been in real time. And like every single week, I'm at the mercy of whatever happens that week for what I'm going to post. And miraculously, every single week, I have a video to post because I think we just attract adventure for one thing. Like we just say yes to a lot of things. We are open and, we have a lot of connections, like friends that, will invite us to do things. And just there's a lot of things that I think organically happen because of our attitude towards life, but also a lot of what our content has become now is the renovations, because we kind of
Mhm.
figured out that that is a niche for us as well. And so when we're renovating something, we've done maybe 6 floating cabins now. We flip them. When we're doing that, the content is pretty self-explanatory. It's like the progress that we've made that in that week. So that's pretty cool. And then Brandon's role with that, is he's kind of like the lead on the construction process and planning it, implementing it. And then I do all the filming and editing. So that basically doubles as marketing. So by the time that we've taken everybody through this process of building the house, we've got like 1 million people lined up to buy it. And so it just
Mhm.
takes care of itself, because we've also made money throughout the process of sharing how we built it. And now we get to, give it a new owner. And so that's been a really cool process. But whenever we're not building, it's just our daily life. And I think the fact that it's not planned out, and the fact that we never do things for the sake of content. Like we don't create situations artificially because we're like, oh, this would make a cool video. Like I truly just film what's happening, and if nothing is happening, then they get to see us doing nothing. They get to see me cooking and me taking Aiko potty, and like just our regular life. And it always
Yes.
amazes me that people still care about that, but they do. And
Mhm.
so I guess to circle back to your question, like on a weekly basis, every single Friday, I'm uploading a YouTube video. And so I'm editing usually maybe between Tuesday and Thursday. I try not to be like right up to the line on Friday, but sometimes that happens because I'm also budgeting my time around my regular work schedule, which thankfully at this point in time is not 40 hours a week. I've been able to scale that back a little bit because of the income that I'm earning through content creation, which is like a positive feedback loop. It's like the more
Mhm.
time that I get to spend on that, the more money we keep making, and so on and so forth. But that's definitely been a blessing to free up a lot of my time for things that I like doing. Um, Not that I don't like my job, because I really do like my job. But yeah, that's been great. And then at the same time, I'm also trying, when I can fit it in, to create reels and TikToks. And that's just sort of something that I do when I can. I don't hold myself to any kind of strict schedule about that like I do with YouTube, because for me, those platforms are just sort of supplementary, even though
Mhm.
ironically we have bigger followings on both of them than we have on YouTube. um, we have a much more, I would say, dedicated following on YouTube, and we also earn more
Yeah.
income there. So that's where I try and focus my time, and that's also the type of content that I enjoy creating more, long form rather than short form for TikTok and Instagram. So yeah, it's an interesting process, and I would not recommend being like, you know, in real time with it all, because there could be times that you don't have any content, and that's really challenging. And if you're ahead of the game and you're more scheduled and organized, that's probably better. But I've never been able to get there.
Well, and what's kind of coming up for me as well is that if you were more scheduled, more organized, kind of batching your content,
Hmm.
it does kind of dip into the territory of like planning your life around the video instead of
Hmm.
allowing the video to just encapsulate the authentic living of your life.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very true. And one time, only one time, I'm not going to bring it up again because of the feedback that I got. One time on our YouTube channel, I mentioned wanting to get ahead and like, take a break maybe and accumulate some content. Everybody was like, "No." Like all of our followers like, "We love that about your channel. We love knowing that like when you post, it's truly what you've been up to, like we're talking to a friend." And I think if there ever comes a time when it's like a safety concern, like when we're sailing and we might not want people to know
Mm,
like exactly where we are in real time, that could be a different story. But um, at least currently, it's like that's never been a problem. And it seems like
yeah.
the folks that watch our content really enjoy knowing that they're kind of seeing our life unfold as it happens.
They're feeling so connected to you that way too,
Mm-hmm.
I imagine. Yeah, and that was just like one of the reasons that I was so excited to talk to you because that authenticity, it shines through, and I just knew that we were going to resonate on all these different levels of like content creation coming from this aligned place, this authentic place. It's not just about like what you're doing, but how you're doing it, and like that
Mm-hmm.
energy that gets infused into the content. I believe like that's what makes a magnetic creator, like someone
A
who's
hundred
just
percent.
truly themselves. Um and there can be like some challenges with that. There can be like a little bit of vulnerability hangover with that, and that's just kind of like a boundary and like a line that you have to find for yourself wherever that's going to be. um but yeah, it is
Totally.
just amazing, and I love what you guys are doing.
That's so sweet. And I think you're totally spot on with that. I can even tell within my own content a big difference in the way it's received when I'm just like overflowing something and it's just so
Hmm.
natural and I can't help but talk about it
Yeah.
versus when I'm creating, like, for instance, a reel because it's like something on trend right now, and it's almost more forced, or like I'm just doing this like to post something today because I haven't posted in a while. I can tell that it's received differently because
Yeah.
it's truly not coming from as genuine of a place. So I don't know how, because I'll watch it back and I'll be like, yeah, that was good, either way it was good. But you can really tell as a consumer when the person on the other end is truly being themselves and being genuine versus when they're just trying to like create content.
Right, right. Yeah, people are geniuses and they're intuitive and they know things even without really knowing. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, which is why when like I do a bit of social media coaching for businesses and stuff now, and when they talk about, what's the best time to post, like how do I work with the algorithm, how do I get the algorithm in my favor? I'm like, you don't worry about any of that. That does
Oh, I
not
love that.
matter.
Yeah, I
No.
love that take. I used to watch a lot of that stuff when I was like maybe 6 months or a year into the YouTube channel and really starting to grow it for the first time. And all these, yeah, like you were saying, things about keywords and
Yeah.
metadata and timing. And it's just, they make it seem like a formula and then you do everything they say and it doesn't work. And it
And it's
just really
draining.
comes,
I'm sure you
it's
found it to be
exhausting.
exhausting. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you're supposed to post every day, and yeah, it becomes like another job instead, and you
Mhm.
kind of start forgetting the whole reason that you came in the first place, which was because you had something to say,
Yeah.
because you have something that you want to share, to communicate,
Yeah.
to make an impact on people. And like the best part about it is you don't have a boss. Like you get to do whatever you want. It's a free country and you are your own boss. Like
Mhm.
you have so much flexibility with what you do, and I feel like the more flexibility you allow yourself, the more genuine your content can be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love to hear some of your future plans for sailing, cruising. What do you guys talk about? What does that maybe look like in the future?
Yeah. So Oh, if people didn't think that the floating cabin life was crazy enough, just stick with us. Brandon has always had this dream of sailing around the world, like circumnavigating the globe, but not like A to B, get there as quickly as possible, across the finish line and you're done kind of thing, but more like cruising as a lifestyle. There's a lot of YouTube channels out there that we watch that do that. And so that's been a lot of inspiration for us as well. But he's got a history and a background of sailing. He spent a lot of time when he was welding, because he would do like jobs for 3 or 4 months at a time and then have a few months off, and he would spend all that time living on a sailboat and learning how to fix everything on the boat and just like figuring it out himself, and so he's got this really awesome experience with it, and I have zero experience. And so it's kind of just like the renovations thing. It's like this
Yeah.
adventure that we're interested in taking on together. And I think that having our YouTube channel and whatnot now really lends itself to that, because, of course, everybody's first thought when it comes to cruising as a lifestyle is, but how are you going to make money?
Yeah.
And so if we were to leave the day jobs that we currently have, where does that leave us? And certainly we're building up our savings now that we're living this lifestyle that is like super affordable, but eventually those run out, right? Like you still got to have some kind of source of income. And so it's been cool to see like that content creation has become a viable possibility for that, like for a sole source of income. We also have a couple real estate investments that we're considering keeping and, renting out and having that kind of passive income. So anyways, yeah, we hope to take off at some point after our dog passes away, and because we wouldn't do that to her. She loves it here. This is her home. She's happy here, and we just don't want to
Yeah.
like uproot that. And so at some point in time, we plan to buy a blue water sailboat and live on it full time for as long as we want to, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, like genuinely, who knows? Like just kind of see where it takes us and basically do what we're doing now, but with more exploration, with more travel, being able to live on the water like we know that we love doing, but also see the world and like take our home with us and have that level of consistency that I love, but also that kind of wanderlust that I love, but also that kind of wanderlust that we both are missing out on right now, because we're very rooted, which of life that we have left to live and a lot of the world that we have left to see. And that gives us a really exciting opportunity to not only follow those dreams, but earn our income while we're doing it by sharing ourselves following those dreams.
Yeah, amazing. And it is the perfect balance of exploration and consistency when you're traveling the world in your own home and every night you're sleeping in your own bed, you're cooking in your own kitchen. Like you have your home with
Exactly.
you, but you get to see all these incredible, amazing places and meet all these people. And yeah, I have a feeling that the community around your lake is got to be tight knit. It's got to be close. Everybody knows one another, checks in on one another. Um, and it's like totally the same in the cruising community too. So it's like that incredible just sense of like, yes, you're alone in your boat, but like there's people everywhere who are doing the same things and everyone has your back. And it just is that way all over the world, which is so freaking cool.
Right. Yeah. That's actually how I found you. That just connected. Like I totally forgot because it's been so long that
Hmm.
you've like been creating awesome content surrounding the Creative Freedom Plan and whatnot. But yeah, that's how I originally found you, was your history with that. So better than anyone. It's really cool how when you're on the water, you really do have to rely on the people around you, because there's always things that are breaking and there's always things that are going wrong. And that's part of the adventure, it's part of the fun, but it also creates these really tight knit communities, like you said, because
Yeah.
you have to rely on each other for one another's skill sets and physical parts and for fun and socialization and all of it. And so that's a really cool aspect of it too, is like the prospect of the relationships that we could build and create along the way, like buddy boating with people. And we love our neighbors here, and I just know that there's so many cool people out there that are you know free thinking and explorative and ambitious. And like a lot of those people are like-minded whenever you're in a similar situation like that, like cruising around the world. That takes a certain type of person, and it's cool to surround yourself with those types of people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Around community, I did want to ask you about like the community response to Hurricane Helene coming through. Like, I know that there was devastation. I know that it,
Mm-hmm.
like, a lot of people are still dealing with the after effects and will be for probably years down the line. But I just know from like experience in kind of extreme situations like that it does bring people together, and people do kind of come out of the woodwork to help one another out when you have this
Mm-hmm.
like common challenge and like overwhelming struggle that you're dealing with. um, but anyway, I would just love to hear what that's been like for you guys personally, other people that you know, and like the area as a whole, just anything that you could speak to on that subject.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That was just so unprecedented and so devastating for this area because, one of the things, like Asheville has always been called one of the safest places to live in terms of natural disasters because you don't have to deal with like anything on that list. And it's just unthinkable that we got so much impact like 400 miles inland. But the fact that we are where we are, I think, is the reason why the response has been as great in magnitude as it has, because it's just a testament to the spirit of Southern Appalachian people who,
Mhm.
forever, throughout all of history, have always been dealing with hardship all by themselves without anybody's help, proactive, self starters, resourceful, community minded people who just go out there and do what needs to be done. And I think that that was like never more true than after Helene. It was really cool to see everybody just using their strong suits, whether that's like, hey, I've got a four-wheeler. Hey, I got a chainsaw. Hey, I got, my pilot's license, or whatever it may be. Everybody was just kind of using the things that they have in their day-to-day life to be self-sufficient to help everybody else who, was just devastated. So it's been really hard to see, but also extremely encouraging to see because we kind of got to see like the true grit of Appalachia come out in a way that I really haven't seen in quite a while.
Yeah, it sucks that it takes something so horrible to like bring out the best in people, but it is just
Mm-hmm.
such an amazing like kind of silver lining to have around an event like that. What do you is it the rural aspect? Do you think that's what gives people like the grit, the self-sufficiency, the ability to just figure things out and not expect like someone to come in and save them?
Yeah, I
What is
think
that?
that's exactly right. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think when you kind of live in the middle of nowhere, which is definitely subjective. I mean, I think out here we're kind of in the middle of nowhere, but some people might even call Asheville, which is like the big city to me, they might even call that the middle of nowhere because it's
Mhm.
nestled in the mountains and it's, a relatively small city, all things considered. And so just the topography of the mountains is like the first thing that kind of lends itself to it being very difficult to get anything done quickly. And so
Mhm.
people, like, nothing is ever convenient. Everything takes forever to be shipped and everything takes forever to be built. And like, it's just, you learn really quickly that you got to get things done yourself if you want them done. And that goes from like the smallest little thing to like the grand scale thing. So yeah, I feel like that is kind of in everybody, but it was like really, really awakened around here. It was cool for us to be able to use our platforms that we've been building up for completely unrelated reasons, um, in that time to like do a lot of fundraising and spreading of awareness and stuff like that. That was just a treat to be like, wow, yet another way that this is like never what I had planned. And yet here we are,
Yeah.
like making lemonade out of lemons. And it's so cool. Just what a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. So amazing. And going off of that, you guys also have the annual trash cleanup around your lake that just seems like it's grown and grown and grown. And I'm sure that like your platform is helping with that as well. Where did you
Yeah.
start with that, and like where are you now? However many years in it's been, I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, we're 7 years in now. And so that started with Brandon before we even met. He had started that a couple years before we met. And this is a great example of what we were just talking about with that kind of like Appalachian sense of like, if you want something done, you got to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
He looked around on this, what should be absolutely beautiful lake, is like what we talked about earlier with how there's no development and it's just mountains and water, and it just has all the right ingredients to be paradise. And he looked around and saw so much trash, and it's just even more out of place. Like, that's not good to see on any body of water, but it felt even more out of place in this really rural, seemingly untouched area. It's like, why is all this here? But it
Mm-hmm.
was such a big problem that like nobody was taking it on because it was just considered to be a lost cause, insurmountable. Like, that has to be the government's problem at some point, because no private citizen is ever going to be able to make a dent in that. Like, the amount of money, the amount of resources, it's just not happening. And he was just like, you know what, you might as well try. And he started the first cleanup 7 years ago and kind of solicited a few of his buddies. I think there were 10 people that came out, and they picked up 22,000 pounds of trash in just 1 mile of shoreline. So that's kind of how it all started. And then it started growing from there, and, more and more people started joining in. And then once there really started to be like a dent made in it, and people were like, I came to this lake last year and it looked totally different and it was actually noticeable. Then it was just like a super positive feedback loop, like a snowball effect. And then the YouTube channel happened, and that certainly has brought in a lot of volunteers and also some funding. And just the whole thing has really like exponentially amplified. And it's always so encouraging to see that happen with something so deserving. Like, it's just such a great event, and it is doing something so good in this community and for this ecosystem. And so I'm just really, really psyched to see the way that that's grown and the initiative that Brandon took on with that. And I'm just so proud of him for that. So it's awesome to see those, not only his efforts rewarded, but like this environment rewarded that we're living in. It's awesome to see it. Every single year it gets cleaner.
That's just amazing. And yeah, people don't want to be part of something until it's already like a success. Nobody wants to
Mm-hmm.
bandwagon in the early stages until that momentum's already there and the snowball's already rolling down the hill. Um,
Right. Oh, yeah. People would like make fun of him actually when you first started it. Like, they would, yeah, it was just kind of beyond me. But it was just that mindset of like, oh, that's cute, like, oh, you picked up one drop of water on the ocean. That's adorable. But then, yeah, over time you start making a difference, and it's like all it takes is somebody who is willing to start, willing to get the ball rolling, and who isn't just intimidated by a challenge, but instead sees like potential and possibility. And so
yeah,
it's great that it's grown to what it has now, and we are up to 500,000 pounds removed from this lake.
it's
Pretty
epic.
awesome.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what kind of like I'm curious what kind of insight you can give me on Brandon that makes him that kind of person that isn't going to be deterred by naysayers or people, teasing him for his efforts, that he's just going to stick with it. He's going to be that rare person that isn't going to just like turn ahead and walk by. Like, yeah, what kind of insight can you give me into this man?
I don't know if that's genetic or environmental or what, but that is truly just who he is. Like, he is a free thinker in the best and truest sense. I think that term gets thrown around a lot now to mean like a hippie aesthetic, and like, no, I mean genuinely the way that his mind works. He's not hindered by the types of things that most of us are hindered by. Like, he's not worried about what people think. He's not worried about um, you know, the outcome even. He's just like the one that's willing to get started and get it done. He's
Mm-hmm.
always been very goal oriented in terms of like he's that person that can't just sit there and do nothing. He wants to stay busy. He wants to be accomplishing things. He's very ambitious, and he just doesn't let any kind of preconceived notion stop him, which has been really beautiful for me because I'm not like that. I'm like probably like most people. I'm just the total opposite of that, and I care a lot about what people think. And there's a lot of things that could hinder me in many different journeys, and it's so great to be partners with somebody like him because he just reminds me that all of that is artificial. Like all of that is just limits that you put on yourself for no reason. Certainly not because it benefits you, but just out of habit. Like maybe because you were taught that at a young age, or maybe because society normalizes it or whatever. And he doesn't care. He's like, I don't care what people say about that. I think that that is a good thing to do, so I'm doing it. And I love people like that, and it's pretty awesome that I got to marry one.
Oh, totally. So as like comments and feedback come in on the YouTube channel, he's probably just like shrugging that off, doesn't bother him at all. And then how's
Oh
that
yeah.
affecting you?
Yeah, yeah, we're opposite on that in the best way, I think. Like, and because you have to have that balance, and
You do.
we're like that on so many things. Like, we're just kind of the yin and yang, and somewhere in the middle is the right place to be, and so it works out perfectly. But
Mhm.
yeah, with regards to the comments, I have always really taken all of those to heart for better or for worse. Like, it means so much to me whenever people give us really positive feedback, and like I don't take that for granted at all. Unfortunately, that means that it also means so much to me when we get negative feedback, and it can really like brew in my head and bother me and like affect my mental health. And Brandon's such a good sounding board for somebody, to talk to about that, because he just reminds me that like it's not real. It doesn't actually matter what that person thinks about you because you don't know them,
Yeah.
And yeah, so he kind of has this really grounded and realistic perspective about it that's super helpful and has been one of the ingredients in my journey of like learning how to deal with those types of comments.
What else is in there? What are these other ingredients?
Yeah, I feel like that has really been like a long journey for me because it definitely wasn't something that I adapted to quickly. Like for years, it would really bother me when we got these negative comments. And it was so shocking to me because the kind of content that I'm producing is so wholesome, genuinely. Like, I feel like there's nothing to hate on, but the internet will find a way. Let me tell you, it's like we are talking about anything controversial, it's all very family friendly. But people will be like, oh, you're an animal abuser for having your dog out there, or like, oh, those things shouldn't exist in the first place. That's not what lakes are for. Or, oh, you guys are trust fund babies, just putting your
Mm.
privilege out there. There's all of that stuff. And it really used to get under my skin, but I feel like it's taken a long time of like self reflection to get to the point where I finally understand that whatever people say, good or bad, whatever people comment, if they're leaving a comment without you specifically asking them, if they're just contributing their opinion, that it has everything to do with them and nothing to do with me. And like, I'm still really ingraining that. Like, that's not something that like 100% of the time I believe. Like, I still am working on that. But it's so true. It's like when people, talk, like speak super positively and like they're happy for you and they love it and they're inspired, even that has nothing to do with me, and I shouldn't be getting like a big head about it because they are just positive people. Like, that's just who they are. And on the flip side of that, when people are being really negative and unkind and spiteful about things, that has nothing to do with me. That, like, if it hadn't been me, it would have been whoever the next person they scrolled to was. Like, they would say the same thing to anybody. It's genuinely like random that it was me. Like, it has nothing to do with the content that I put out there. And so just kind of learning that what people say is a projection of who they are rather than a reflection of who I am. Oh, that was good. Um, like it, that trying to ingrain that is an ongoing journey, but it's been really cool to finally see that like landing lately, and like I can start to let things roll off my back the way it naturally does for Brandon. Even though I'm an empath and I really like feel those things, I can set that boundary and just be like, that's got nothing to do with me. And then, of course, every now and again, like when somebody leaves a very targeted, very like personal attack kind of a comment that does have to do with you, like I'm just going to block them like it's nobody's business, because you don't have to give everybody access to your life. Like, if can you imagine if they were standing in your home saying those things? Like, they would not be standing in your home any longer, obviously. And so, you know, at most comments that are negative like that, I try and just remind myself about the whole projection thing. But yeah, if it's like very malicious, like I just cut that person off. Like they shouldn't have access to my life and a window into our accounts anymore. There's nothing wrong with that either.
I love everything that you just said so much because I went through basically the exact same sort of process and epiphany. And I love the metaphor that you gave about your house because that's something that I used to, where I'm talking to people and I'm like, you wouldn't invite someone in your home who wasn't going to be respectful of you and your home,
Yeah,
and your social media is your home. And yeah, they get freedom
yeah,
of speech. They get to say whatever they want to say on their own account. You don't have to host that bullshit. Like, come on,
that's exactly right. Yeah,
block it
yeah.
out.
It's like, I mean, not to sound, you know, like whatever, but letting people have a window into your life is a privilege. And you don't have to let
Absolutely.
everybody have that. Like, because you know that you're sharing something that's valuable and that's contributing something good into the world, letting people have that, especially for free, like we do on social media. Like, you don't have to pay to see our YouTube videos. So if you're going to come in there and, you know, try and like tear them apart, then you don't need to be here, you know? That's not, it's totally fine to just cut people off. If they are disturbing your inner peace. And so it's been a cool balance of like being less bothered by that stuff as I start to recognize the sources of where it's coming from and where it's not. Um, Versus also just being able to set boundaries and be like, that's yeah, you're not allowed to be here anymore. Like it's not my problem anymore.
Amen. Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. And maybe we're kind of, I feel like we're hitting on it from all different corners, but maybe if we could wrap this up with just like a nugget of wisdom, a piece of advice that you could give someone um, who's maybe at the beginning of their kind of journey with creative expression. And because I know there's so many people in the world, and probably a couple listening, who are looking at you and where you're at, and they're just like, oh my gosh, I could never get there. Like, kind of holding you up on this pedestal and like, wow, it's amazing. Like, all these followers and that growth and the consistency. Like, what kind of advice could you give someone who's just starting out and feeling that calling, but maybe doesn't know where to get started, or just needs a little push in the right direction?
That's a great question. I feel like, and yeah, you're right, we have been hitting on this a lot already, but I feel like when you're coming from a place that's genuine, then it becomes easy. Like, not that content creation isn't work and it isn't time consuming, but I feel like whenever you are excited about what you're sharing, it won't really feel that way, you know? And so my advice would be to focus less on content creation and focus more on your actual lived experience. And if you're not actually happy in your life and you're not passionate about whatever your niche is, you know, if you're just trying to earn a living or something like that, probably not for you. But if you're really passionate about what you're doing, then just keep circling back to that passion. You know, if you're like a knitting account, like don't forget to be knitting off camera. Like keep circling
Mhm.
back to your actual real life and like what your internal experience is, and don't get too caught up in what you're putting out there, because I feel like the more that you are focused on your actual real life experience, the more that that translates into really genuine, magnetic, just, you know, inspirational content. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, that is a clip right there. Life first, content second.
That's exactly it. Yeah, to sum it all up, life first, content
Amazing.
second. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah, for being on the podcast and sharing your story with me and the viewers. It means so much. If there is any other thing that you would love to share, I would just love to give you the floor. Maybe let people know what's coming up on the channel or where they can get involved and support you and view your work.
Oh, that's super sweet. Yeah. I would definitely invite people to check us out on YouTube. Like I said, we're also on Instagram and TikTok, but YouTube's my favorite. And what we've got coming up is two exciting renovations this winter. So if you're into like DIY, HGTV, home reno type content, this is the place to be. And it's got a fun, unique spin on it with us being on the water if you're a nature lover as well. So if that's up anybody's alley, then we would love to have you come join us over on YouTube at Keeping Afloat with the Joneses. And outside of that, I would just like to say thank you to you because I'm consistently inspired by your content and just your confidence and your sense of ambition. It's really cool. Even though we've never met in person, I want to say to like surround yourself with people like that because I will say the people that you're like scrolling through are also kind of surrounding you because they are influencing you. And so every time I see one of your posts, I'm super inspired and I learn something new. And I just want to thank you for the type of content that you create and for being your genuine self and never being shy about who you are.
Thank you so much. That means the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I will have the links in the description of the video for anybody who wants easy access to hop on over to Keeping Afloat with the Joneses. And I think that wraps us up for today. Oh, thanks again.
Oh, thank you. This was so awesome. I had a great time chatting with you, and I wish you the best of luck with everything that you've got coming up.
Likewise. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Creative Freedom Plan podcast. And if you loved it so much you'd like to shout from the rooftops and share it on social media, be sure to screenshot, tag me at Michal Emily Schuster, and share it to your story so I can stalk your profile and we can connect over there. Much love to you, and I will see you in the next episode.